At the very end of 2024, the price of cocoa did something it had never once done in its entire history. It rocketed up to nearly $13,000 a ton, 4 to 5 times its normal price. An all-time record. And you felt it right there on the shelf. Your favorite chocolate bar quietly got smaller or pricier, or honestly both. Some treats jumped 20, 30, even 40%. But here's the genuinely strange part. That price was not set by Hershey or Cadbury or any chocolate giant at all. It was set by the weather and a plant disease on farms in 2 countries you have very probably never been to. So how can a candy bar sitting in your hand depend on a rainfall in West Africa? And why on earth did record prices somehow leave the farmers who actually grow it just as poor as ever? The answer is one of the most fragile and quietly unfair supply chains on the entire planet. So let's follow the money all the way from the shelf back to the tree. Every single piece of chocolate starts its life as a seed tucked inside a pod on a cacao tree. The beans get fermented, dried, roasted, and ground, and only then do they become the chocolate that you know. Now, where do all those beans actually come from? Well, overwhelmingly, from just one small corner of the whole planet. Roughly 2/3 of all the world's cocoa grows in just 2 West African nations, Ivory Coast and Ghana. So just think about that for a second. A global chocolate industry, worth well over $100 billion. Balances almost entirely on the yearly harvests of small farms in only 2 countries. And that heavy concentration is the hidden crack running right through the whole system. Because when something goes wrong in that one small region, it does not stay local. It ripples out to every single shelf on Earth. And in 2024, an awful lot went wrong, all at the very same time. First, the weather turned genuinely brutal. Wild swings of harsh drought and then heavy rain wrecked the delicate cacao crop. And then, on top of that, came the disease. A virus called swollen shoot plus black pod rot tore right through the aging trees. Together, the weather and the disease gutted the harvest in the worst possible year. And the result of all that was a global shortage of over 500,000 tons of cocoa. The single biggest shortfall this market had seen in decades. Far more demand than there were beans to ever fill it. And just for a little perspective here, for most of the previous decade, cocoa had traded quietly along at around just $2,000 to $3,000 a ton. So this really wasn't some normal little price rise. It was a complete break from everything the market had ever known. And when a commodity that everyone needs suddenly runs short like that, its price does not gently drift. It absolutely explodes. So just look at what cocoa actually did. Here's the thing that most people simply don't realize. Cocoa isn't really priced by the chocolate makers at all. It is a raw commodity traded on the global markets, exactly like oil or gold. So when that shortage hit, traders and manufacturers scrambled for every last available bean. And the price rocketed up from a sleepy few $1,000s a ton to a record of nearly $13,000. And a move that violent in just a single year is almost completely unheard of for a humble farm commodity. Is the market screaming in real time that there simply is not enough chocolate to go around? And just like that, every single chocolate company on Earth suddenly faced the very same brutal problem. Their single biggest ingredient had become around 4 times more expensive almost overnight. So what exactly does a chocolate company do when its main ingredient suddenly quadruples in price? Well, it really only has a few options, and you, the shopper, end up paying for every single one of them. The most obvious one, of course, just raise the price. The sticker on the bar simply goes up. And that is the 20 to 40% jump that some shoppers saw on their favorite treats. The far sneakier one is shrinkflation. The price stays exactly the same, but the bar itself quietly gets smaller. Same wrapper, same money, just a little less chocolate inside. You pay more without ever quite noticing. And the third little trick is the recipe itself. Less actual cocoa, more cheap filler, more whipped-in air. And so the chocolate slowly, quietly becomes just a little bit less chocolatey. But now here's the truly, deeply bitter part of this entire story. With cocoa sitting at record prices, you would naturally assume the farmers who grow it all finally got rich. They mostly, sadly, did not. Because in Ivory Coast and Ghana, the government sets one fixed price that the farmers get paid, often locked in months in advance. So when the market price suddenly exploded, most growers were stuck on the old, low price. So who actually pocketed that enormous record windfall? Well, largely the traders, the speculators, and the middlemen. Way up the chain, far, far away from the muddy little farms where the beans truly grow. Many of the world's cocoa farmers live on just a couple of dollars a day. They grow the single key ingredient in a $100 billion industry, and yet taste almost none of its actual wealth. And that farmer poverty is not just some sad side issue. It is, in fact, the very root of the fragility itself. Because the farmers earn so painfully little, they simply cannot afford to invest back into their own farms. So the trees just grow old and tired. Many of the cocoa trees in West Africa are now decades past their prime. Far less productive and far more vulnerable to exactly the disease and bad weather that struck. And honestly, it gets even worse. Unable to make any kind of living, some farmers have simply abandoned their cocoa trees altogether, switching over to other crops or even to illegal gold mining, which, of course, only shrinks tomorrow's supply even further. And so it becomes a vicious little loop. Low pay means old, weak farms. And old, weak farms mean a deeply fragile supply. And a fragile supply means that shocks, like 2024, become almost inevitable. So the genuinely uncomfortable truth is just this. Cheap chocolate was actually never really cheap at all. Its nice low price was quietly borrowed from badly underpaid farmers and from neglected, aging land. Now, the very worst of that spike did finally ease back through 2025. Prices fell down from that record peak, but they're still sitting far above their old, comfortable normal. And cocoa simply cannot bounce back quickly. A brand new cacao tree takes several years to fully mature and bear any fruit. So even with sky-high prices practically begging for more supply, the beans just cannot arrive overnight. And the real, lasting fix is slow and genuinely hard, paying the farmers far more, renewing all the old trees, spreading the growing to new regions. And none of that ever happens in a single season. So you can probably expect chocolate to stay a bit pricier and a little smaller for quite a while yet. The shelf has quietly and pretty much permanently changed. So the next time your chocolate bar somehow feels smaller or it stings just a little bit at the till, remember that you're really not looking at a simple candy bar at all. You're looking at a whole global supply chain under serious strain. Its price is genuinely a message about the weather, about disease, about a few small farms quietly carrying the entire world's sweet tooth. And about who, in that very long chain, actually ends up getting paid. Cheap chocolate, it turns out, was always really just a quiet kind of borrowing. And at the end of 2024, the bill, at last, finally came due.